Chillin', everybody. Welcome today, this evening, that is. Somewhere in the Midwest, somewhere in Australia, New York, all over the place. Wherever you want to be. This is the Bobtheorc Show. Doing things that you like to hear, and doing other things you might not want to hear. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Bobtheorc. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bobtheorc.
All right. Thank you, Richard. Welcome, everyone. COVID and your health and honking against the mandates. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We got some great guests, but first, our disclaimer. This is a work of fiction. None of it's real. And this is for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real-world people or events is purely coincidental. So YouTube, please don't ban us. All right, so we've got a great group of people here tonight. We've got, we're going to first introduce Dr. Mezitis, who has the outstanding record of not having lost a single patient to COVID. And he is going to talk to us about how your health affects positive outcomes for not just COVID, but for disease in general. And so let's begin with that. Nick, thanks for joining us from the prison colony of New York City.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I'm greeting the group as well. I don't know about the introduction about not losing anyone, because obviously, nothing is ever perfect. But certainly we developed some understanding of things. And I think people also had the opportunity to appreciate certain things that we had become negligent on. And as we discussed in one of our previous programs, we can't ignore, our body and our immunity, because that's the foundation that protects us, basically, right? But like the protection to your house. So you can't rely on the police force if you haven't taken security measures of your own. That's the best protection generally. And that's how we kind of set the stage for the patients that I've been monitoring over time, because I'm a specialist in endocrinology, diabetes, and nutrition. So a lot of our people come in with the underlying foundation of a chronic illness, which sets you up with a vulnerability, which means that you're actually at a disadvantage, or in a way handicapped in terms of immunity if you don't get managed properly. But I'm also an internist, and I take a larger view of things. So we don't narrow in specifically on the problem itself, but we look at health, as a package deal, holistic, or whatever term they like to use. And as such, nutrition figures very big into the equation. And obviously, like with anything else, whether you have a pet or a flower or whatever you're doing, you have to take care of it in a particular way. So we're very sensitive to that, those of us who do have pets, or who do take care of gardens or grow things or whatever we do. Or even for that matter, take care of equipment, There's certain specs, how you do things, what you put together, what type of parts you assemble. And that's very much how we like to view it and explain it to people, because people come from all walks of life. Not everybody happens to be a sophisticated academic necessarily, nor do they have to be. It's just a matter of reaching out, explaining things in simple language so that they can conceptualize what we're trying to say. We're not here to judge. We're not out to, Bible thump or anything, but we're out to communicate information that's of importance, number one. And number two, what we like to do is to emphasize that you don't need to be scared. Because usually what happens, and you'll probably talk about it in the second section, is there's this element of fear that periodically, comes through. and there's some type of a boogeyman that comes into the picture and kind of herds everybody in a particular direction for a particular reason. And then once that exhausts itself, then we find another boogeyman and we're herding everybody in a different direction for a different reason. And all the while, there's a group, let's say, that might be looking at it from a distance and not necessarily participating in all the excitement and the fear and the depression that that generates. So from our point of view, we're dispelling fear. We're emphasizing to people that they pretty much have all the tools that they need on their own to manage crises, right? So if you're well taken care of, if you're a car driver, is taken care of, you take certain precautions. Obviously, there's bad weather, and you try to take precautions under the circumstances. But you have to take care of your tires, your lights. You pack certain things for crisis, eventuality, a blanket, flares, whatever you need. And if you're prepared, you're not the one who's going to get creamed, in the snowstorm or the backup, or getting caught, without fuel on a highway in the middle of nowhere. And so, in the case of COVID, which happened to be just one more crisis that we were confronting, we had this particular, weird type of bug, if you will, which is a virus that came into the picture and appeared to be something that spreads quite swiftly, has a facility in spreading. Kind of peculiar in terms of its identity. We hadn't seen something quite like this because it had features that were classified as what we call a chimera, chimera, which is kind of like one of these mythological animals that has the body of one and the features of another, from ancient Greek mythology. So it had these kind of weird features that lend it to spread. And in a vulnerable population, vulnerable because, like we said, they were not attuned to taking precautions, had become complacent, kind of protected in terms of their immune system because we haven't been exposed to many things that, feature out globally. So we might get Montezuma's revenge if we travel to Mexico, but we're not as prepared for that type of thing, locally. In this globalized world, you have to be different. You got to be prepared for things differently. So whether you like it or not, you don't have to go to Mexico. Mexico's going to come to you. China's going to come to you because populations move, and within 24 hours, you could be halfway across the world. And anybody that comes and travels with billions of bacteria that populate their body and their gut. And, things spread. But if you prepare yourself properly, like we said, this is a given that we're going to be exposed differently, and we no longer have the luxury of just becoming a little negligent, slothful, what we call comfort foods and so on and so forth that are known to be basically non-foods. And we had a population, as we discovered, and we knew, but I guess most people have now discovered, that are nutritionally deficient, they're malnourished. I'm talking on a grand scale, malnourished. So fried peanut butter sandwiches and Coca-Cola and Mountain Dew that we have in southeastern Ohio are not considered to be the foods that are going to help your immunity. They're actually going to undermine it. But yet that's what most people were subsisting on. High carb diet, a lot of soda as their preference drink, so to speak, and a lot of fried. So that sets the stage for damaging the pipes in the body, weakening the immune system. And so then when the wolves arrive, that's it. It's like cutting hyenas loose in the chicken coop. They'll just kill everything. And we don't want to be in that type of position. So all it takes is a matter of planning ahead. And now the message is being delivered a little bit more forcefully. So I always had my patients, for example, on vitamin D supplementation because the majority of the population has vitamin D deficiency unless they've been supplemented. And by that, we mean, levels that are like 20, 10. Some people from the Middle East are low 4s. And you should technically be around 50 or 60 with your levels, which is very unlikely that most of us are. I discovered I was 20, even though I thought I was supplemented.
Yeah, you told me years ago that I had to start taking supplements, and that made a huge health difference for me.
That's one example, and other things too. So we advocate a good diet, which brings good protein in, And fortunately, especially now in the middle of the country where people have access to produce and farms and things like that, there's no excuse to not being able to get a fresh egg, not being able to get some vegetables, developing an appetite for some salads and stuff. That's important. And that's basically what you fertilize your gut with, because your gut, as we tell people, has trillions of bugs that live in there. Probably more bugs live in your gut than you have cells in your body. And they have to be fertilized properly. So what they like is plant foods. That's what you fertilize your garden with. That's what you fertilize your gut with. And the bugs that are more into the flesh eating, they're not the type of bugs that you really want to encourage too much. You've heard the names C. difficile and enteropathogenic E. coli, MRSA, and stuff. We don't really want to favor them. They exist there, but we like to have a nice balance in the garden. So we fertilize with plant-based foods, and of course we include, good quality meat protein. And we also like to water things properly, and usually you water things with water. And as I tell a lot of the patients, whatever you plan to drink, give one to your dog. I can't do that. So why can't you do that? He says, I can't be giving Mountain Dew to the dog or Diet Pepper. Then I guess it's not fit for dogs, right? So you're drinking stuff that's not fit for dogs. Once they kind of view it that way, it begins to register that we're putting something into the system, which in the long run is going to cause problems. And earlier I was mentioning fried, because when you take oils up to high temperatures in your truck or your car, you have to do an oil change. The black stuff that comes out, nobody wants to use that, even though you might give it to them for free. That doesn't get put back in, that's trash, because it would damage the pipes. So taking something which is covered with black oil that's been fried and consuming it is going to damage your pipes, and it does. And so we have no business damaging our pipes, poisoning our bacteria that are our protection, because if this virus is going to visit us, we have our own bacteria that usually, chew it up in the proper setting with certain precautions. Obviously, if we kind of fly by night, then, like I said, it's cutting the wolves loose in the chicken coop, and you have very unpleasant outcomes. And the worst outcome, obviously, is to land in an emergency room, because there you're going in to be helped, you assume, but that's the worst place to be. It's like going in, buck naked into a very bad neighborhood and trying to find some help. And the bad neighborhoods are, bad neighborhoods, unpleasant people. You're not going to come out, looking good if you come out at all. And that's usually what happens in the hospital setting. And once you start, putting tubes in and stuff like that, then things get very tricky. And the assumption that taking a particular antibody or taking a particular antibiotic or taking a particular vaccine is going to cover for the fact that you're unprepared with your bulletproof vest and the equipment that you carry, that doesn't work. Not anymore, and not in the neighborhood that we're in, and not in the world that we're going to be populating, whether we like it or not. And you'll probably be discussing it, and the truckers and everybody else understands that. You got open borders now, and you've got people coming in from all over the place. And they're going to be riding next to you in the train. They're going to be sitting next to you in some type of an office. And they have all sorts of new, unusual things. And, it's that's just the way life is. So the best thing that we can do, as I said, and I'll just, close it up and take questions and discuss whatever you like. But the best thing is to prepare ourselves in the proper way with a good, healthy lifestyle, good nutrition, avoiding the things that are going to poison our bacteria. And we're going to be ready for it. And fortunately, like I said, we can be very much ready for it. I mean, I have no problem with COVID or SARS-2 or whatever, I mean, it's going to come and visit. I had it, and it wasn't pleasant, but it was a bad cold. They're kind of unusual because I had muscle aches that I hadn't experienced before and so on. But I did my gargling, with, oil of oregano, and I took my vitamin D, and I, took precautions, and there are other things too, that one can take. Obviously, having a good physician is important for you. We can't give medical advice on a grand scale, but suffice it to say that doesn't scare us any more than saying that I'm a Navy SEAL and I'm scared because, the ISIS fellows over there. Yeah, he can do mischief. I'm prepared. I'm trained. I'm coming in. And I think I'm going to come through this. And that fellow over there is not going to be around for long. So that's the mentality. And we do not want to run around, and generating a lot of fear, and especially in little kids and young people, that are scared to hug daddy or grandma because they think they might kill her or him, and running around with masks since the age of 2 and stuff like that. That's not the answer. It's part of the answer under special circumstances, but that doesn't stand in to replace what we were discussing earlier. So that's kind of like a little introduction to this topic, because the word COVID is just one word, and I could replace it with 3 other weird bug situations that are equally, if not more lethal. And we just take our precautions. We knew about that. We knew about hand washing forever. We knew about good ventilation forever. Now, the fact that we accepted to be seated in airplanes with poor ventilation, with dirty seats that they don't clean, between flights and so on and so forth, we were doing that for a long while. We accepted that, and there was a price to pay eventually when the bad guys arrived. So now we're learning different, and we're doing stuff that we should have been doing a long time ago. And washing your hands is no smarts, and putting a mask on if you're going to be in a very closed space with 20 other people and the windows closed. I mean, it makes sense. Chinese were doing it, I don't know, 10 years ago. I would see them, and I thought it was a little unusual. But from where they come, that was very much appropriate. So that's where we stand. And I think I have a positive message to deliver for everybody. But certainly I'll be happy to hear any comments you have and suggestions, and
All right.
we can discuss.
So I guess a couple things. One of the big a long time ago when I was a kid, when I used to have bad allergy problems, I remember that I went to see you because I was always having allergy problems, and you wrote me a prescription. You wrote down on a piece of paper, very simple words. It said, "Stop eating crap," and that was your prescription. Yeah. And so like instead of eating chips, I'm eating some cherry tomatoes, things like that. So I stopped eating crap, and I can't remember the last time I've been sick. Just that one simple thing, and not eating junk food, not eating a lot of the garbage I used to eat. That made a huge difference. I have a really important question though. Since this show is about eating bacon, the whole premise of the show is a bunch of people hanging out, like we would around the dinner table. What's your opinion on bacon? Is bacon the best food in the world, or is it something we have to be cautious of?
So there's no food that's, bad or off the table, so to speak. Everything in moderation. But there are people, that bacon is kind of like, 365 days out of the year. It's a little excessive. So you don't want to be excessive. But number one, like I said, in moderation, so you can include it as part of your breakfast periodically, not every day necessarily. Number two, if you take a look, you got to read the labels, because that's why they put the labels there. So the label is there basically, not so much to inform you, because they make it small so you can't read it, but it's there so that there's no liability on their part. So bacon will also say no nitrites, for example. And there's a reason it says that, because those have been known to be carcinogenic, right, among other things. So if I'm going to get some bacon, I'm going to make sure that it's the version that comes from an animal that hasn't been treated with GMO antibiotics, has nitrates and so on and so forth. I try to get a quality product. Now, I'm in southeastern Appalachia, where I've been on a mission there, dealing with people that have been disadvantaged for many, many, many years. And many times I hear the story, well, good food is expensive and so on and so forth. And that's a fallacy, because good food is not expensive. What's expensive is the medicine that you're going to need if you don't eat good food. So one pill can cost you $10. And if it doesn't cost you the $10, it costs all of us the $10, because we have to subsidize the fact that you're going to be having a copay for it. But even those copays, they add up. And especially if we've got people with diabetes and other problems, it's not unusual for me to monetize my prescriptions like you do your Amazon cart, and it adds up to $3,000-4,000 a month, of which people are paying $300 or $400. but $300 or $400 is a lot of money in the parts where I'm currently, and it's a mortgage. So that's that. But the 4,000, if you multiply it by the millions of people that are in the same predicament, you're talking gigabucks. And what's the response of the system? The system now brings in generics, which is, kind of wannabe medications. And it also puts substitutions in. So I order A and they put in B. Or sometimes they don't even fill it at all. And they say, look, we don't cover that at all. So figure out something else. So again, we're trying not to rely that much on medication. And we're trying to do the job as best we can with, as I said, good nutrition, good lifestyle, so you don't have to escalate to medication, which is expensive.
So
good food, you eat less. Yes.
So basically, what you're saying, it sounds to me like you're saying, is if you go with the higher quality food, it could be the same type of food that you like. You just go with the higher quality that doesn't have all the artificial fillers. You're going to save in the long run by not having to take a bunch of medication. And that brings me into something that Bubba had said to me once. He does some financial coaching, and one of the big things he always tells people is not to skimp on food. That because if you don't have good food, you're not going to be able to do anything else. Bubba, do you have any questions for Dr. Mezitis?
I actually have quite a few. I was hoping I'd be last, though. I'm knocking on the fourth wall here.
We can save you for last.
I would because my comments and my questions are going to lead into the other topic you wanted to discuss tonight. That's why I said that.
All right. Who has a question for Dr. Mezitis?
Oh, other
right.
people.
What is that, Kevin? Can we hear you? Oh, Kevin, we can't hear you anymore. I think you're.
Yeah, you're muted.
You muted your mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. So Kevin.
Hello.
I didn't mute my mic.
Oh,
Hear
okay. Yeah, we can hear. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you, Jen. Jen, do you want to ask a question first, or do you want Kevin to ask first? Who's got the next question?
Whoever.
All right. Let's. Kevin was raising his hand, so let's get Kevin first. So Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself and then ask your question.
My name's Kevin Barber. I'm a PhD chemist and background in chemical engineering as well. I've been out of academia for about 10 years and recently gotten back into it. I guess that's about all I really should say at this point. But first off, I want to thank you for what you're doing in Appalachia. That's kind of a neglected part of the country, and those people need a little help there, and that's good. I'm glad you're doing that. But my question for you is, I take 5,000 micrograms of D3 with some K2 just to keep my immune system up with everything going on. And I've heard different people say that, there seems to be two schools of thought. There's basically that you shouldn't take over 1,000 micrograms of D3, and the other school of thought says you should take 10,000 micrograms of D3 a day. So I've kind of shot it in the middle. Do you have any advice on that? I know there's possible side effects with calcium and some other things, but what are your thoughts on D3 and K2, and specifically what kind of dose would you recommend? If you can do that now without giving medical advice on this, and I don't want to get you in trouble, but just tell me you can't answer. That's fine.
That's an excellent question, Kevin. Vitamin D, vitamin D3 that you're mentioning, a lot of people like to take it together with vitamin K, because the idea is, and there is a supplement that comes in that form, because the idea is that it kind of works better. But the fact is that I used to belong to that school that you just mentioned, where we said 800 of vitamin D was considered to be, like the dose to give. But in my experience, and also dealing with physicians who specialized and did a lot of research in vitamin D, I came to appreciate the fact that 800 is no longer, or 1,000. I mean, that's not really the amount, except in special cases where they get by maybe with that much. But in most cases, you have to be taking at least 5,000 units of D, like you are. And certainly if I were to have a situation with COVID, I would take vitamin D 10,000. And many of my patients actually take 10,000 units a day. It sounds like a lot, but when you track the numbers, In other words, we check periodically the levels in the blood, and we try to hit levels that are, like I said, high 70s, 80s. If you're less than 100 with your levels, we consider it to be safe. So it's appropriate. Now, what's this vitamin D story? Vitamin D is a hormone, and it's a vitamin at the same time, and it's also what we call a prebiotic. So it feeds these bacteria in the gut. It's like a very enriching type of fertilizer for them, and it keeps them on top of things. It also is what we call, it has these anti-inflammatory properties. So it's like soaking your tissues with fire retardant, because bugs and illnesses and diabetes and COVID and whatever, they cause what we call inflammation. So say they set fire to the tissues. That's how they damage the tissue. And by just soaking the place with fire retardant, they could be throwing matches all day. It just doesn't set up that blaze that they wish to do, you see. Then we have other tricks that we use as well, to interfere with the process of striking matches. But vitamin D is essential because of the anti-inflammatory properties. And that's why we use it for diabetes in general, because diabetes represents inflammation in the tissues and damages the blood vessels and scorches your insides away. So it has a lot of power there. It hasn't been emphasized enough, and it's been neglected, actually. It's probably been neglected in a lot because of the fact that it's not well understood and because it's inexpensive, right? I mean, there are a lot of expensive treatments out there, and if we start giving everybody broccoli and vitamin D, for example, that doesn't really serve the larger picture in certain boardrooms.
So a diabetic, it wouldn't be. I'm not diabetic, but my mother is. So if I got her to take 10,000 units, that wouldn't be too much.
I would check her vitamin level, or check her vitamin D level, you see. And
Yes.
if she's, less than 40, you definitely should take 5,000 units, and one can decide on the 10,000. Again, it's nice to have the physician involved, you see. Now, there are
Right.
physicians who don't believe in vitamins and don't believe in nutrition and supplements and so on and so forth. And we accept that. I mean, that's their particular approach. But I don't think that particular philosophy is what contributes to what we have in mind anyway for health.
What unit? You said 40. 40. What's the unit on that number? Is it?
Those are nanograms per ml.
Okay.
Nanograms. Those are the
Oh.
units that we usually, when you do blood work, that's what you're looking at. And as I said,
Okay.
in most cases, if you're less than 30, we need to improve on that.
Okay. So 75 or 80 is good. Okay. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you answering my question.
Sure.
All right, let's go with our Jen and our studio audience. Jen, you still with us?
So I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, okay. So my question is about the whole. What is your stance on purified water? Like, there's a whole movement saying how purified water leaches important minerals from your body, and that we should move towards more mineral water, natural waters. And I know, like, the big thing is vitamin D and B supplements to help with the COVID outbreak.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, the water supply is very important. Unfortunately, the water supply has also been tainted because it's kind of hard to get a good water supply these days. Many times, it comes from rivers or whatever that have been contaminated. In Felicia, near Marietta, they had this problem with a C9 that was leaching from the DuPont plant. A lot of people had huge thyroid issues, big issues in the news. Other parts of the country, Detroit, I mean, you've heard stories. So water is an expensive commodity. As a matter of fact, I heard that down in Texas, they were selling bottles of water for $8. And in some areas, it's more expensive, as you may know, Jen, more expensive than gasoline. So it's important to have good quality water. There's no question about it. And tap water, just like it is, you got to think about it. Now, some places, they just take water and they distill it. Just regular tap water, they distill it and they sell it. Some of these companies do that. I think you're better off if you have a natural water. And if you take a look, there are various types of waters, especially if you go to a health food store or something, you may see various types of waters featured from even various countries, and they have their minerals and such. So we have to be cautious because we don't want, too many minerals in the water. You might have problems with kidney stones, for example. So you don't want to be getting too much calcium or something in the water supply. But generally, a good quality natural spring water is your best source for cooking and drinking. Everything, you got to think about it that way. Some people can put a filter. They have those too for your water. And it's good to think about that because we're very careful about water, but then we go out sometimes and we get our coffee or drinks or whatever from the coffee shop, and they're using the local tap water, right? So it kind of defeats the purpose sometimes. You got to be thinking about these things. And it sounds like we get a little too compulsive and obsessive, OCD type of thing. But when you think about the downside these days, we can't be too careful with what we put into the body, right? I mean, you don't take up on diesel because it's convenient, right? So, if the car is an expensive car and they said you got to put premium, and I want to keep the car and I want to get mileage on it, I might do what they said in the manual. So, I'm with you on that. I think, paying attention to where that, what the ingredients are and where that water comes from is important.
Oh, okay, but do you believe that drinking purified water on a pretty consistent basis leaches minerals, or do you think that's a false claim?
I don't know about if it's leaching minerals, purified water. When you say purified water, what are you referring to? I mean, is there a particular brand that you have in mind, or distilled?
Just like the ones that's by the EPA, per state, how they purify water like tap water, not
Right.
necessarily particular bottled brand.
You gotta look at the whole equation, so to speak. So if they're purifying it, they're taking out all sorts of toxins and things that don't necessarily belong in the water. So you're better off, I guess, in that instance, drinking the water that's come through your filter than just taking it straight. But you may be lucky and be near some type of a very good source. And they usually also test water, and you can get that type of information. You can also send your water in to see, what the quality is. So if that's something that you want to follow up on. But to leach minerals out of your body, I don't necessarily think that's the case. Obviously, we also track things as we examine patients and so on. But I don't think that would be a cause for it to leach minerals. A good water, in other words.
All right.
Thank you for the question.
All right. Who's next? Who's got a question? Maddie, you're staring off into the space there. You got. I know you've been wanting to say something snarky this whole time. You've been behaving yourself. What do you got down under?
Oh, I find it amusing in Australia. The first shops that they shut down were all the small businesses where we could get local produce from. It's like now I've got to buy, the crap from Woolies or Coles because all the fresh veggies from the veggie markets we used to always have have all been shut down because of COVID. And that idea that you've got to have the money first to buy good food. It is true that junk food is a lot cheaper. Like I could buy 24 sausage rolls for $3, but that would be like 4 tomatoes. So I can see the idea of paying it forward, but I can also see that if you're dirt poor, you don't really have much of a choice because fresh food is expensive. It's all well and good if you've got the money up front, but if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're just trying to get by, that's not necessarily an option.
I think that's a good point, but two things happen here, especially if you have the luxury to have a little plot of land, you could put in some vegetables the right time of year, and grow up. Things people do that, or maybe a neighbor has chickens or things like that. I mean, that could be done. Also, I've noticed that when you go into places, I'm not sure about the food markets in Australia, but in the United States, they have like a Trader Joe's or Aldi's and so on, and these are lower end markets in terms of pricing. But now they're featuring vegetables, all sorts of things, and you can get,
It's not the
a
same in
tub of.
Australia. In Australia, we've got 2 supermarkets, Woolies and Coles. And since the COVID epidemic, they've shut down all the small businesses. And basically, the ones that did exist pre-COVID don't exist now because they've just gone out of business.
Something
and because Coles and Woolies basically wiped out their competitors during COVID, they have seriously raised prices in the last 6 months. I used to buy I used to spend like $200 a fortnight on food. I live by myself, obviously, and about 8 months ago, I used to buy Puro water, which is like these big 10-liter goon bags of pure water, and that was included in my $200. Now I spend $200 and I have to go shopping in my second week, and I'm not buying that $50 worth of water anymore. And I do feel worse. Like, I'm drinking water from the tap, and I feel stupider. Like, my brain's not working. I was at work the other day, and I felt like I'm having a stroke.
See, that's why they're misguided, as I would say, in their public policy. They're putting all of their eggs in one basket, and they're going crazy about vaccines or whatever. Yet, they're missing out on exactly what you mentioned. In other words, all of this important aspect of nutrition that we're discussing here, and everything that you're noticing. And actually, it's making people sicker, and it's making people depressed. And if you go to schools, that's what we see, which is the worst situation. In farm communities, instead of seeing fresh eggs, on the menu in most places and so on, they'll bring stuff which is shipped in, from who knows where, and kind of mac and cheese and whatever, and not even setting a healthy example for these kids. Then you put masks on them to top that off. That's in no way helping their health, and the fact that they're going to get a vaccine is not going to in any way going to be able to replace all of this other stuff that you just mentioned, which is not being provided. You see, they know what to do, but I'm not really sure why they've elected to follow that path. It seems to me like it's they should know it.
It almost to me feels like a conspiracy theory where our government's colluded with big business to shut down the competition.
Obviously, that's fictitious because government and big business never collude.
Yeah.
That's why we tell everybody that this is
I said it almost feels like.
Yeah, it almost feels like that's why this is purely entertainment and purely a work of fiction. None of us here believe that the government ever does anything bad, and big businesses are great savior, and obviously our great tech overlords and their government allies would never do anything bad for profit. Something interesting you just reminded me of. I've got a buddy in New York who has a garden where he's taking a bunch of these like Home Depot buckets and tubs and stuff, and he's growing his own food in sort of a semi-urban environment. I think he's got a little bit of a patio, and so he's able to plant fresh food in these essentially in these buckets.
Yeah. Well, you brought up eggs before, and I used to be able to go down to a farm just down the road from here and get fresh eggs. And I bought these free-range eggs from my local Woolies, and I cracked it open, and the yolk wasn't yellow. It was sort of like clear.
That's weird.
And it was only this one egg that was clear, but I've noticed that it doesn't taste the same either. And I spent the extra money to get the free-range, only so many chickens per hectare, the expensive eggs, and they just, like, one came out clear, and I was thinking, that didn't look like a healthy egg. Like, am I getting lied to about this whole free-range thing, or what's the deal there?
It kind of raises questions, right, about the labeling, because like with anything else, you have to be able to trust the labeling. So there are entities, that check these things. But then again, I don't know about Australia, and it's very possible. The only way you'll know, like you said, is going down to the neighbor and getting what you need. I mean, that's probably the best, farm to fork.
They've shut that dude down now, because of COVID.
Well, they're misguided, I think. That policy is misguided.
I think the Australian government, fictionally, is completely incompetent. Because they're doing all sorts of things that, like, how can I not go to my corner store with all free, like with free people in it, but I can go into Coles and Woolies with 100?
Well, that
And
reminds.
they're all out there touching stuff, like they're not wearing gloves.
I
So-
was traveling recently, and because of COVID, this airport got rid of all the seating area because they didn't want people sitting and being close to each other, and instead it forced everybody into the small room waiting for the airplanes because all the seating area that would have allowed people to spread out was all roped off. So but that was in Moscow, and we're allowed to say that the Russian government's incompetent. We're just not allowed to say that Western government.
The Australian government did the same thing with our trains. During COVID, they reduced the amount of trains, so more people were on the one train.
Yeah.
Like, it almost feels like they're intentionally trying to spread it. Because why would you reduce the amount of trains and getting more people onto one train than spreading them over many trains? Like, wouldn't be the idea to have more trains so you spread out?
Yeah, it's a weird situation. You wonder who's minding the store at this point.
Yeah. And I think that's what's causing a lot of the anger in the community, is because, like, a 10-year-old could think that that's a stupid idea, yet it's gone through many layers of government and much bureaucracy and still came out, Like, did no one say, well, putting more people on a train, that will spread it quicker?
Yeah.
Like, that's gone through literally tens of thousands of government workers to get to that. And me, sitting in a couch, thinks that's a stupid idea. It's obviously flawed. So how did it get through these 10,000 government workers?
All right.
They get away with it.
Yeah. All right. Who's next? Danasi, you've been quiet. You have anything for Dr. Mezitis?
Not that I can really think of. I mean, surprisingly, this is just a lot of stuff I've heard before, and I try to adhere to as much as I can. But actually, here I do have a question. How do you think the rising inflation will affect people's ability to get stuff like good food, if they need a good medicine, stuff like that? Aside from, obviously, it'll be harder, but what do you think?
Yeah, they're actually predicting, that we're going to have problems with getting food, period. That's going to create, some situation where you're going to have, they're talking about hoarding and preparing, for situations with empty shelves. And I'm not sure where that line of thinking is coming from, but obviously there are a lot of pieces to a very large puzzle, and we only see certain parts of it, as they kind of produce it, like a magician brings out things, rabbits are coming out of hats and stuff. So you're trying to, see how you're going to be able to conceptualize this and survive in the middle of all of this excitement. So I agree that, inflation is one thing that eats into your income. And as we just heard, it makes a difference in what you can afford and get, and to get this quality stuff. And then you're doubting whether the label is actually telling you the right information about what's in the box. So a lot of stuff is being challenged. So we're going through a period of big time change. All you can do right now is you just have to protect yourself. That's all you can do in the best way. You know what I'm saying? So let's say you're going into the food store, I tell people it's like going into a difficult environment, so to speak. You got to go and prepare. So you're going in, you have an agenda, you're going in to get specific items, and then you're going to come out, and you do your comparison shopping. Obviously now we have access to the internet. You can compare things. It takes a little bit more preparation. It's not like it used to be that you could walk in and just take it and so on and so forth. We're going to have to become a little bit more. And we see also things that we weren't familiar with. So if in New York, we see these lines outside of Trader Joe's, for example. And we thought that, I used to see bread lines, in the news about Soviet Russia or something. And now you see these lines of people that are outside of these stores because that happens to be a place which has certain good items and the prices are favorable as opposed to other stores that are much more expensive. One example. So, things of what you're describing, that seems to be kind of coming in our direction. This is very new. Also, the fact that you're going into stores now, and you'll see and you'll hear it that there are empty shelves. We didn't have that before. I mean, just empty shelves. So what happened? I mean, I didn't realize that just kind of vacant. They don't replace items. They say, well, there's a supply chain issue, stuff not coming in. This is new for us, right? Especially in the United States. We never had supply chain issues and stuff and this and that. So I'm not sure where they're headed with all of it. But as I say, I mean, we come in and my job is to do detailing for people, so to speak, like people do detailing for cars. So that's the way I view it. And I'm trying to make sure that you, with your vehicle that you inhabit right now, that you can get maximum mileage on it, right? So maximum mileage, let's say, would be 90 years. So what can I do for you? So that because there are no trade-ins. The equipment you've been issued, that's what you get. He says, well, I don't like this, and somebody else has a Mercedes. Doesn't make a difference. You could still have, your Volkswagen Beetle and get, 600,000 miles if you do the right things. And the other guy can drive it into the dust, within 2 years, even though it was an expensive vehicle. So doing the right things, and that's where we also come in, is to help guide this process. What should I take? What should I buy as a food? Is this any good? Should I take that supplement? I mean, the physician should be in a position to give that type of advice. I mean, if he's just going to be there to push a couple of pills and sit and see the next person, like a 2-minute interview, that's not what you need right now, right? Especially if you have an older vehicle that you prize and you want to keep, you need that level of attention. And if they don't have the time to give for that level of service, then, we'll just have to look. It's unfortunate it's getting more difficult, to find that level of expertise. It's getting more difficult, to find people that want to give that time because there are all sorts of constraints and situations that make it difficult to practice that way anymore. So as an individual, you're kind of in a much more difficult situation, right? You have to seek out, you have to become more active in identifying what to eat, in identifying where to shop for it, in identifying who you're going to get as an advisor, right? But, we do it if we shop for, some equipment, right? Consumer report, this, that, the other. I mean, you spend some time before you buy the car or whatever you do. So this is no different. I mean,
Right.
Somebody can't do it, they'll find somebody, a young person, like yourself, or somebody that can help them, because not everybody can do it, right? Or they have the savvy. So they'll hopefully get some advice on that.
All right, Richard, do you have a question? Coming live from the People's Republic of New York City. You're muted.
Yep.
No, if you're still muted. Yeah, your Discord is. Yeah, there you go. Can we hear you now?
Yeah, you can, and I just changed my view somehow. I didn't know how I did that.
All right.
I changed the view. I look at it differently now.
I know we can see you fine. Yeah.
Everything's fine.
So give us an
somehow
update from the
the-
People's Republic of New York City. Are you?
Well, that was what I've been listening quite intently, and maybe this is a good question for the good doctor as well. I'm of that older age. In fact, we're probably very similar. I did not grow up. I mean, we had the Hong Kong flu. We had all those various flus and all these different things going on for many years. I remember when I was a kid, we had them. But in all my lifetime, now I don't go back as far as the Spanish flu, but in all my lifetime, we never had lockdowns. We never wore masks. All these little types of things shutting down. I've never seen this before. So I'm not used to it. So like I was going to the school today over at where I do lessons, do classes from time to time, and they're doing a singing performance, and all these guys, all these students are wearing masks while they're singing. This is the most ridiculous thing, but the school is requiring it. And I said, and they're not even close to each other. They're like doing solos, and they're back of the stage. And I said, why are you wearing masks when you sing? And this it spreads the germs. First off, I don't think this Omicron is as serious as the original one anyway, but I'm not a doctor, so what do I know? This is fictional. But the point is that I'm just frustrated, and I'm in that older age group, which apparently is more vulnerable. But I've had 3 boosters. I even was tested positive for COVID about 10 months ago because they said, oh, I had it. Really? Never felt a thing. For 10 days, I had to quarantine, lose work. Never felt a thing. I've had colds that were worse, and I am not in. Mr. Bobtheorc will tell you, I was always one who loved sodas and things like this. I'm not a nutritious person. I didn't take my vitamins and all this, and yet maybe I had immunity or something. But my point, what I'm trying to say is, I am so frustrated to see all these people just closing, like in Australia. I can't imagine what he's going through there. It's just crazy. I mean, we've never done this in all these many decades. To see this happening the lethality rate is so low. No, I know I'm mouthing off here, but what's the answer, Doc?
Well, I guess what he's trying to is how does this compare to diseases of the past? Because it is definitely people are definitely handling COVID very uniquely compared to anything that I've read about in history.
Yeah, I know, but we've had some serious issues in the past. I remember the days of Woodstock. There was a big that year. There was a big flu that hit through that point, and yet people were not distancing or whatever. And
well, but they were hippies, and nobody in the '60s cared what happened to the hippies.
That's right. But my point is, like I said, I've never seen governments or cities lock down or schools do all this stuff, and what I'm seeing in the last 2 years, this is the most frustrating thing, and it's affected my business quite a bit because they wouldn't have theaters open, and they're so afraid. All this fear, it just drives me nuts. And the way it's affected everybody in whatever business you have. I don't understand it. What's going on?
I think that's the worst thing, right? To plant that fear, because it stays, especially for the younger people, it stays with you, right? So it's a form of PTSD that if you've been exposed to that, then it's very difficult to deprogram. So there are going to be repercussions looking at. Obviously, this is going to work its way through, but like you said, some of this is a little bit over the top because you can see that all of this doesn't necessarily make sense. And at the same time, certain measures that would be important for hygiene, like you said, nutrition, whatever you do to help people's immunity, they're not being emphasized at all, right? So somehow it doesn't jive. The whole focus is to make sure that you get vaccinated and that you have a card. And if you're not a card-carrying member, that's stuff that came from different societies, right? It's almost like your social credit score in China,
One thing I forgot to mention, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but just a few days ago, maybe it was even yesterday, they had this new report by Johns Hopkins University, the one I'm talking about, where they said, and frankly, none of the media except one particular one covered it, and it was talking about how lockdowns have not really reduced the lethality in the numbers they thought. It was a very small amount that had any effect on lethality. That lockdowns should never have been used. That's basically what the report was saying. You know the report I'm talking about?
Yes. But the trouble is, the people that have made certain decisions that affect millions, there's a loss of faith were they to accept something different, you see. And there are also going to be repercussions once that's accepted as such, that certain things should have been done differently. And they're trying at this point, to kind of weasel out of it in a way, ease out of it. You see governments in Denmark and Great Britain and so on, they're changing. Holland, you see. So obviously, where they can, they're backing out of it, whether it happens to be those COVID passports or whatever. They're kind of backing out, and the vaccines and so on, because it got to the point of absurdity, right? Every 3 months you need another vaccine. I mean, we had never had any type of vaccine before that's required of 3-4 boosters a year, in order to work. Not even to work, but actually just merely to, quote, protect you. Because vaccines, the definition was something which confers immunity. But recently they changed the definition to fit, and they said vaccines are no longer conferring immunity. If it confers protect, then that's good enough. And that allowed these to get approved. So obviously there's more to the puzzle. But like I said, we have to do what we've got to do. So we have to start at the lifestyle level, which is what we control, and do what we got to do. And then people make their choices about what they're going to do about these other things. The fact is that there are concerns now because the cases of, for example, myocarditis, or just the number of cases reported in general, are much greater in the past year than ever before. Independently of vaccines and so on. So they're they're looking at it more closely and saying, what's going on? And why do we have this ever since, they started with these mass programs? So there's a lot to be said, but we don't really get good dialogue, you see. What we're doing tonight is unusual. Usually you have, the major media are going to give you a particular, carbon copy discourse, and that's it. No discussion. You don't really get people. And actually, some people that have expressed opinions that are a little different have been taken off, what was it now, recently, with Facebook and so on and so forth. It's not favored to have too much of a discussion along those lines. And again, I emphasize the important thing right now, independently of what is being proposed, is to, get the lifestyle under control. And then people can make their choices about what else they want to tack on. But don't think that just by, taking a vaccine or something, that's going to solve the issue and there's full protection. I think it's pretty much acknowledged now that that's not sufficient. And as far as the masks go, again, you have to use your judgment on that. But like you said, in the drama school, it might be that particular setting. I've seen other settings where things are a little bit different. So I guess those are the.
So I've got a quick question for everybody, since Dr. Mezitis is starting to red pill everybody. Do we want to take a 5-minute break and then start recording the Rumble section so that we don't have to hold back on any spicy conversation? I'm not sure how much our tech overlords will appreciate the idea that healthy nutrition and healthy lifestyle makes people healthier than living a crappy lifestyle. Dr. Mezitis, can you?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Before we cut off, it seems I've heard from a lot of sources that vitamin D seems to be very important. Yet the first thing our government did, I don't know what your government did, was to lock everyone inside. And so we got no sunlight.
Well, that's because you guys gave up your guns.
Hold on. I want to piggyback on that a minute. Because for the first time in 46 years at the time, my labs did not come down straight down the middle when I did my physical. There was 2 things I was deficient in my last physical. That was a little over 3 years ago. Now, taking granted, I was outside every day, but I worked the oil field, which means I was wearing flame retardant everything. Sleeves, covered, hard hat, long flame retardant pants and things like that, and my vitamin D came in deficient. So that's why I wanted to piggyback on that a little bit and also get your input on that particular thought process, if I could.
That's exactly right, and that's why we're saying that it should be supplemented. And studies have shown that, as an example, Sweden didn't do the lockdown part. They were very liberal in their approach. They were taken to task for it, but their vitamin D levels, from the statistics that we saw, they were in the high 70s on the average. Their number of fatalities from this COVID pandemic story was comparable to the United Kingdom, where the average levels were 35, and they locked down everything and did everything, that we're describing, and so on and so forth. So just to show that, there's something to be said about what we're discussing here. And the lockdown in and of itself, is not the answer. It's not even necessary, because if you're going to put people out of business and it's going to cut into their livelihood and make them sick and depressed and poor, that doesn't promote longevity.
All right.
That doesn't, like a strategy. But that's what happened, right? I mean, how many businesses were affected, especially food business, entertainment.
We're getting stats now that the suicide rate in Australia has outpaced COVID deaths.
Right. I mean, it sounds like we're back to a penal colony, right? I mean, it's a bad situation.
Well, Bob did say the penal colony down under. I mean, so he may have nailed that.
Are you suggesting that they're not international transit bungalows? Speaking of vitamin D and sunlight, Vorgath, it's winter in Canada. Do you guys even have sunlight, or is the sun hiding with Trudeau in the bunker from all the truck drivers? I mean, you're in Trudeau's bunker guarding it. So, what's the status? Do you actually have any sunlight, or has that been banned?
We do get a couple hours of sunlight.
Oh, okay.
A year.
If you're working in India, right?
Trudeau's got COVID himself.
Yeah, I think we're getting some bad signal there. He might be too far north. The moose might be interfering again.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
No, we do get a couple hours of sunlight, and apparently Trudeau himself has COVID.
Well, hope you're keeping your distance from him.
Ironic.
Funny how the world elite seem to be getting a lot of COVID.
Especially when
Honestly? Yeah.
It's also funny that it happens when there's 50,000 truckers going to protest against him.
Oh, boy.
The Great Honkining is real. Quick question, Dr. Mezitis, how are you doing on time? Can you stay with us a little bit longer, or do you have to go save the world?
You want to do another 15 minutes?
Yeah, we can keep going for another 15 minutes. Do we want to start the spicy rumble section, or can we? Do you want to keep going? Well, if you know what, if we guys get too spicy, then we'll just edit and split the video. Yeah, that way our YouTube overlords won't get. Worst case, we just put the whole thing on Rumble and screw YouTube. So,
just because you said that, it's going to happen.
Well,
Yeah.
So speaking of prison colonies, so at one point I was thinking of flying out to Hawaii to visit, because I hear it's beautiful, and I like volcanoes, and then I thought to myself that maybe spending 2 weeks quarantined in a hotel room before I could even leave to see the volcanoes wouldn't be all that useful. Jen, what's going on in Hawaii? Are they still doing all the lockdown stuff? Have you guys reached Australia levels yet, or not quite?
We have never ever reached Australia levels. I feel like Australia has taken it to like a whole different degree, because they believe that they're like Aboriginals are endangered species over there. So that's why
they are pretty endangered.
Don't you guys classify them as plants?
Yeah, they're classed as fauna. Yeah, we're.
Because what the fuck is with that?
Actually so we didn't have to give them any land rights.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, so they literally classified the Aboriginals as fauna?
Wow.
Yeah,
Good, it's not flora.
not the
That
finest
doesn't sound right.
sign of humanity.
Yeah.
You are now a thing. You are not a person.
Oh my God. Man, and they say America treated our Aboriginals bad. You guys put us to shame, or rather, you guys make us look good. Oh, looks like
Yeah, it was. There was a. I don't know when it was, but there was a vote to completely wipe them out, and it only missed by like 2 votes apparently.
When was what the fuck? When was that?
When was this?
I don't know when it was. It might be an urban legend for all I know.
Hang on, I'm going into a private window on my phone and googling this.
Yeah.
I don't want
Thanasi, go look that up. Do the research thing.
I heard it from a very left teacher,
Reliable source.
so it might have been a bit of white guilt going on. But I did hear that in school.
Wow. Yeah, no, we don't really classify the indigenous people of. Oh shoot.
You don't classify the indigenous people as
My phone died.
I figured that Fijians were pretty big, though. Sort of like why the English made a treaty with the Maoris, because if you shot one, you just piss him off.
That is a good point.
Yeah, that's sketchy. Fuck.
Richard,
No, I tried to Google it on private in my phone, and it said we're detecting unusual activity on your computer. I'm like, nope, not going with that any further.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need to find one of those VPN companies to sponsor us. I'm still trying to get the bacon company that I like to eat from to sponsor us. Yeah, one of those guys.
Sorry, I've got the fuzzy wuzzies onto you.
So what's the practice? Since we're talking about the Great Honkining and all that stuff, right? Richard, did you have something you wanted to ask? Your hand is.
Oh, no, not that exactly. But I'm gonna have to get out of here because I have a class early in the morning.
Okay.
So I have to get. But anyways, nice discussion, everybody. Nice to meet everybody.
All right. So since Richard has to head out, why don't you give us some music interlude, and then we'll transition to talking about mandates and the Great Honkining.
Woo!
This is Bobtheorc. Worldwide Discussions. La 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 la. Whoa. Ba 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 la da dee da dee da dee do ba 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 dee ba doo ba dee da.
Yeah, take that, Joe Rogan. You might have the largest podcast in the world, but we have live music.
That's right.
Dead music.
Yeah.
You gotta go, guys. I have to teach
Thank
you
you.
in the morning. See you later.
All right. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for joining us. All right. So, well, that was pretty awesome. So I guess let's transition into mandates and we'll transition into mandates and talk about if they're actually worthwhile, if any of these lockdowns or any of these extreme measures actually help. So what we'll probably do is this will probably be the end of the YouTube portion of the video, and we're going to do a part 2 where we'll talk about the mandates, the Great Honkining, all the truck driver stuff, and because that's going to get a little bit
Okay,
spicy.
so wait. So I'm not worthy of YouTube discussion?
Well, I just don't want to get my ass banned. Because if we fully unleash you and Maddie upon Dr. Mezitis, we will totally get our
that's just it. Mine is just a comparison question when it comes to
Okay, well,
this.
let's hear it.
But a whole lot of backstory when it comes to why I never tested positive in 2020.
Now,
And I went in every state in the lower 48 that year. Okay, I was a professional driver from 1998 until 2020, and during I want to call it the big shutdown that happened. I can't remember if it was late February of 2020 or early March is when it really started taking effect. The company I drove for hauled three things. And this is also going to show the problem of alcoholism in America. One was medical supplies. I went to California every single week from Columbus, Nebraska, out to Long Beach, California, or to Redlands, California. Okay. The second thing we hauled was food. People have to eat. Three, I think I pulled 3 loads a week out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Beer?
For the beer.
You got to have your priorities.
Well, and those are the three biggest things. And my question for the good doctor here is, I was tested every week. Every time I went out to California, I had to get the COVID test. Every single time. I didn't take any supplements at the time. I didn't have any booster shots. I haven't taken a flu vaccine in 15 years that I can think of.
And you were still married then, and that really hurt your health.
See the gray hair? And I never contracted it once. And again, I want to piggyback on a point I made earlier is, again, up until 3 or 4 years ago, my labs were straight down the middle, 100%, completely normal. Only recently have I, we discussed the vitamin D deficiency that I've rectified. So my question for you, doctor, is how would somebody like me who is in every single state in the union, especially at a hot center like California was at the time, not contract anything? I didn't even have a cold that year. And I had the typical truck driver diet, which we're not going to get into that one right now.
Which Dr. Mezitis would not approve of.
No, he would not.
But then again, like I tell people, we run a tab on everybody. So eventually, you stand up and say, well, I'm leaving. Where are you going? We have all of this. What? So I never realized, we were running a tab over a number of years. So you never know. I mean, the fact is, it sounds to me like you have good constitution, but I wouldn't bet on it, just, I mean, you should take care of your vehicle and like you do your vehicle, take care of yourself.
Right.
You need the better diet and so on and so forth, because not all of what we're discussing is going to become readily apparent. You know what I'm saying? And especially with truck drivers and so on, we hear the story where somebody's there and then they collapse on the wheel, massive heart attack, and nothing was ever an issue. All of a sudden at age 50, XYZ happened.
Stop. I'm 7 months away from that. Don't say that. Don't be jinxing me.
No, I'm just saying. I tell people, I like the fact that your labs where they were, but I tell the students and our younger doctors, we're like the scouts. You know what I'm saying? If you walk in and you're looking for the little twig that's broken, you're looking for the shred of cloth, on some type of a branch. And then we change direction. He says, why? Because we're not going to go that way. So what's wrong with that? I mean, we were doing fine so far. Because we're going to get scalped. And so we change direction. And we save the wagon train. So this is great stuff. Obviously, you've got good constitution. You've been, blessed with a good body and everything else. But I wouldn't drive it to ruin, because with your description, you could get to be 96, and pumping away. But
46 more years of this crap?
But if you keep it up this way, you might not get that far.
That's true. That's very true.
You gotta take the time.
Ever since I came off the road, I have been eating healthier. I think I have a salad every couple of weeks now. I'm kidding. But it's something I have noticed, and other than my lower back issues, which come from the 22 years of driving a truck, that now I am feeling better on the average. I still indulge myself with my big breakfast every once in a while, but it's every once in a while. It's not every day.
That's right.
You don't want to hear what are the other days. But I've noticed that, and so I just wanted to get your take on that. Again, 48 states, huge metropolitan areas, interfacing with people on a daily basis, whether it be the truck stops, the shippers, the receivers. If I went grocery shopping, I always went grocery shopping, and I hardly actually ever ate out. I had my own air fryer, I had griddle, I had microwave, so I could do everything in the truck. I mean, granted, it cost more, but I was also eating healthy at the same time.
Yeah, if you think about,
there you go. You were taking care of your food supply better than the guy that usually drives the truck, stops over at a Wendy's or a Long John Silver's or something, and grabs whatever they take out, right? And they might be finding it in Quaker State and deliver, roadkill or something. So I think you were doing a lot of things right, even though it was a difficult lifestyle. And being exposed in some ways also protects you, right? Because small doses of exposure, you build up an immunity as opposed to being in a little cocoon, right? And all of a sudden they take you out. The first thing that comes along, like a bunny, right? Cut it loose in the woods.
What happens?
Just
like that.
That's it.
Okay. Bob, you're about to say something?
Let's build on that. Let's not just waste it.
Right. Bob, you're about to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that you grilling a ribeye every night in the truck is probably still healthier than eating at McDonald's. So.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor Maddie's. Poor Maddie's like,
night.
I remember when we had ribeyes.
Those were the days.
I remember when I could afford meat.
We're at the Rumble section, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean,
I do want to.
I'm gonna edit. I'll edit a break in the middle, and that way we can just go ahead and just dive right into being naughty instead of recording as two separate videos.
I was wondering if I could go ahead and take a 15-minute break, run to the store real quick, pick up something, and come right back.
Okay, well we can what we can do is we can stop it here. Does anybody have any final questions for Dr. Mezitis? That way he can get on, because I was going to ask if the if the mandates are. Let me think of a diplomatic way to phrase this.
Well, I guess. Well, I want to say that.
So, like we know from any serious study of history or of science or anything, life is a series of trade-offs. There's no perfect solution, and whenever you do one thing, you're going to have a counter effect as well. And I want to ask your opinion on the trade-offs of these extreme lockdowns and mandates and other things. Did that have a net benefit, or has that been a net drawback, compared to the negative?
Let me just make it easy for you, because I know that's the topic that you're interested in. Mandate, I could have the best advice. I cannot force you to do something, even though I think that it's been medically proven. It could be proven in the best way. For example, you're diabetic and you need insulin, and that's the best way to approach it, and it's pretty much convincing. We pretty much all agree on it. I cannot force you to take insulin. You understand what I'm saying? That is your choice to make. So therefore, even though all the experts and everybody will agree and everything else, and this is what you've got to do, we cannot take you, lock you up, and somebody's going to come in and stab you with insulin, on an ongoing basis. That can't be done. So therefore, no matter what it is, you have to agree to it. It could be a procedure. It could be an X-ray. It could be a CT scan that I think is necessary, an MRI. I'm going to pay for it. I mean, I don't want to have it. You have the right to control that element. You cannot be forced to do anything, and those were laws, after the Second World War that were passed. You cannot be experimented on. You cannot be forced to do things, and especially these days now, where things are in an experimental stage, and they're justified because of the fact that it's considered to be an emergency situation. Even in such a situation, I cannot force you. If you say, I do not want to be transfused, I have to sign for that before surgery. You're going to have surgery. Would you agree to be transfused? And I don't want to be transfused, and I can't transfuse you see. Would you want to be defibrillated in the event, because I just had a procedure, I had to sign off. It says, in the event that your heart stops while we're doing it, should we recover? So I have to sign off that, yes, I want you to defibrillate. Do you want a transfusion? You have to sign off on that. So therefore, that's not at the judgment of the surgeon or anybody to make that type of decision. Okay? And, you have to think about those in those lines. Now, how they came around now to mandate and to put it in. And basically, if you notice, they're saying, it's up to you, but if you don't agree to do it, then you can't keep the job. I'm not forcing you, but yet I am. Yet I've done clinical trials for over 20 years, where we did studies and informed consents on all of the drugs, many of the drugs that are in circulation for diabetes and osteoporosis and other things. And first off, we had to inform the patient, make sure that we get informed consent, about 10 pages that have to be reviewed, individually signed each page and so on. You can't read them. You got to bring somebody in that can explain it to you. And not only that, but I cannot give you an incentive that makes it very difficult to refuse the study. In other words, I can't say, part of this study involves chopping a piece out of your thigh that we're going to look at under the microscope, but we're going to give you $10,000. I'm not allowed to make that type of an offer because that's considered unethical and puts you in a very difficult position, knowing of your income. The $10,000 would be forcing you to make a decision you normally wouldn't make. So I can offer you a gasoline card. I can offer you, maybe some extra medication on a particular day, but I can't make that type of incentive. So all of a sudden now they want to rewrite all of the book, and that cannot be done. And they have a problem with that. And they're being challenged, obviously, because it's, we have an oath, and the oath is the Hippocratic oath, and it's very specific in what you're permitted to do. So we're there as advisors, and we can offer you advice, but you say, look, I want to have bacon 6 times a day, every day. And I cannot say you're going to be fired if you do that. I can advise you to do it less frequently, for example. But they want to bring into that. Once you open the door to that line of thinking, there's a lot that can drive through, because that's just an opening. It's something which is novel. So we went through that, in the Second World War. And as scientists, and as physicians and so on, our first position is with you, and to advocate for you, to give you advice. You make the decision. And that's why I emphasize I have nothing to argue against the vaccine for or against in terms of your willingness to take it. I just give you the advice on how to take care of your vehicle. Now, if you want to drive it, on the side of the road, as opposed to putting it on the road, or you want to put, extra width tires or whatever, you might want to consider. But if you ask for my advice, I can give it to you, but that's up to you. So that would help you perhaps thinking about things.
Well,
mandates.
And it's very hard to. The issue that I have with mandates is that, how you've always done medicine with me is you handle me on a very case-by-case basis. I'm very different than a different patient, and you analyze each patient individually. And it seems that when you're doing these blanket mandates, you're trying to treat all of society as one person rather than recognizing the individual nuanced difference between every person. And so I don't know how effective that is. I'm not necessarily in a position to judge. My concern is that, it's causing a great deal of social degradation, I suppose to be the word. People are getting angry. People, you have 50,000 truck drivers honking their horns in Canada, and Canada's supposed to be like the most polite place in the world. I don't know if that's actually true. That's the rumor.
If you notice, I'd like to visit Canada, but I can't even visit Canada because right now you need certain paperwork and you need the COVID and you need quarantines and so on. So in other words, it's creating big issues even across the border, let alone, what it does for people's livelihood, right? And so you can't take truckers and say, you're not going to be able to drive if you don't do this or you don't do that. And what? And then every 3 weeks or every 3 months, I've got to do X. Otherwise, you take away my license. Who ever heard of such a thing? But that's what's happened.
And then they wonder why supplies aren't getting around.
Right, or positions for that matter, everywhere, right? They're saying to healthcare workers. So we went through that recently, A lot of the nurses were saying, listen, if this is the case, I'm going to leave nursing. I'll go work at Walmart or something. Because I'm not going to quit. So, this would be a huge issue. And in some countries, it has become a huge issue because you don't want to lose qualified personnel. You don't want to lose your truckers or pilots or military personnel.
Actually, what's happened in Hawaii. I said that's actually what's happened in Hawaii. Like because I used to be a nurse, and there's been a lot of turnover because all the higher ups are of an elderly age or in high risk, so they essentially resigned. So a lot of the staff is like new and like people fresh out of school.
And so that damages the level of care. And in the midst of a pandemic, the last thing you need is to lose, right? It's like in the middle of a battle, we're taking all of seasoned officers and everything out. We're also, basing selection on whether you are plus or minus, when you're not doing all the other stuff that we discussed, you see, that's even the worst part. Because if that's being offered as something supplementary to a lot of good health lifestyle practices, that's a different story. But that's not happening. So,
I work in aged care, so I've been told, get my third shot or lose my job already.
Get your third shot?
And then they're talking about the fourth one and so on and so forth. So,
I've got to have a COVID certificate to say that I've got my vaccine just to go to the pub. They check it at the door.
If I may, real quick, we were talking about how, you said they're trying to make this universal vaccine. Well, I'm a prime example. I have a medical exemption. I literally cannot take the vaccine.
Yeah.
And yet, that limits me supposedly from, stuff. I was supposed to go on a trip to Japan but I can't. Because I can't get the vaccine.
They've been closed for a while. It's been real bad over there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know, but, they were still letting people in so long as they got vaccinated. At least from my school. But because I literally cannot, I can't go. I think that's crazy.
Was this recently? Because they've been closed up for a while. Had a trip to go over there as well.
They were supposedly going to keep us updated, but as far as I'm aware, it's still on.
I know it's gotten so bad there that because a lot of the smaller businesses closed and they had such a shortage on trying to get the vaccine and people purposely spreading it there. Some of the elderly were purposely committing suicide so that their families would have money to survive there.
Well, I've heard that's happening everywhere pretty much.
Yes,
well, the Japanese have kind of a long history of creative ways of committing suicide, if I remember my history properly. So,
you get your COVID certificate here. You're not even allowed in some shop. You can't go to the pub. You can't go to the cinemas. You can't go to restaurants. You've got to show your COVID certificate before they let you in.
Yeah, so it's similar here.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a COVID certificate, but YouTube would ban me if I showed it to you. So,
Not only
It's just
that,
real, not real.
we've got to log in.
Kevin
We've got to log
knows
in
the
with our
COVID
phone.
certificate I'm talking about. I think he's got the same one.
But we've got to log in with our phones as well, so they can contact
Oh my
trace.
God.
Oh, they do tracing meter over there too?
Contact
So
tracing.
when I go to the cinemas, they've got like a, what are they called? Like a barcode
Barcode
thing.
scanner?
So I
QR
scan
code?
myself in, I scan in who I'm with, I show my COVID certificate, and then I can go into the cinema, for example.
What?
Oh, that's awful, man. Sounds like tyranny to me. That's just me, but
No,
I'm glad
it
we
definitely
do that
is.
up here.
Hmm.
You know,
Well, good news is, in my province in particular, they're dropping all restrictions.
Does this
Good.
have to do with all the trucks, or are they going to do that regardless?
Well, considering the news is a few days prior to the trucker rally, which I'm watching right now, and no violence, no litter, a lot of dancing, singing.
Yeah, I heard they were picking up the trash. Like they drive into town. Were you the one who was telling me that all these truckers would show up and then clean up trash?
Pretty much.
Oh,
That's really awesome. I feel like it was the opposite that happened here.
bringing people together.
Well,
Are the
there's a.
Canadians making us all look bad?
I know, right? Well, no, there was a. I think there was a guy like Scott something or other, Scott Pressler, I think, who would organize these protests where he would go into neighborhoods, like into impoverished neighborhoods, with a bunch of protesters who would go and just like clean up trash and debris out of these impoverished neighborhoods and register people to vote out the politicians who let the neighborhoods get so crappy in the first place.
Right.
So,
That's good.
Pretty
no,
cool.
I mean
Well,
cleaning up
also-
trash is a great way to protest.
Like that was the only positive thing that happened to Hawaii during the quarantine, that the beaches and everything was really serene and beautiful because there's less pollution, there's less people like going out and leaving trash everywhere. Unfortunately, that is a thing here.
I would
That is
also like
true.
to.
I can see the stars a lot better. Like there's less
I would-
air pollution by far.
Yeah, Bubba, what do you have?
During the, again, I want to refer back to the shutdown that happened back then. It used to take me an hour and a half to get from Ontario, California to Long Beach. When California shut down completely, it took me 20 minutes to do the same drive.
Wow.
I still don't know why
Um,
anybody would drive in California.
Well,
You go there to get
they needed their IV pushes. That's exactly what I was hauling out there. 19,500 pounds of the IV cleaning push solutions.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That whenever before you, 19.5. That's all it was. I was light running through the mountains of Colorado. Whee! With wanted to put skis on there just so I could ski the slopes for once in my life, because no traffic in Colorado either. All the way through there. I mean, I think a normal good fuel mileage in a truck is 6.2 to 6.4 mile per gallon. On those particular trips, I was getting 8.1 to 8.5, just
Wow.
because none of the starting and stopping that I usually had to do. And it was beautiful. And I found out, and this may upset some people, and I really don't care at this point if I upset people. We found out who was essential and who wasn't, and 90% of Southern California isn't essential. I have the truck tape to prove it.
Oh man.
Oh
When-
my
when
god.
I can-
Oh, shit. Go ahead.
When I can turn an hour and a half trip into 20 minutes and not change any of my route, what does that tell you?
Right.
Well,
Since we're in the Rumble section, I know I can say this. So
Some
there's
people
a
should
joke
stay
my friend
home.
told me. It's like, so if you had 3 nukes, where would you drop them? The first one, San Andreas fault line. Get it all away. Don't want it. Second one, New York, because no, apparently. And the third one, Japan, in case they thought we were sorry.
Wait, where? What?
Terrible.
That is terrible. Oh my god. Oh.
Yeah, it is.
We are in Rumble now.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, this.
I'm not dropping the bomb here.
Oh man. Oh, you're such a terrible person. Fucking Zoomers.
Christ, I didn't even go for genocide.
I know, like Maddie's in shock. Usually, Maddie's the one who says all the crazy shit, and you're just outdoing him today.
Please.
I didn't know we were on. I was waiting for us to get to the Rumble, but now that we're in Rumble stage,
Yeah,
There we go.
well, I thought we were going to take a break, but we'll just edit into 2 chunks then, just to be safe.
I know why Mr.
because
Truck
I need
Driver
that
didn't
break.
get COVID. Do you want to know why he didn't get COVID? Because all those truck stop bookers sucked
Answer
it
after the
out of
break.
him. Tell the truth.
Oh my god.
Oh, Maddie unleashed.
You know the truth. Well, do you, buddy?
Dr. Mezitis, I haven't seen you smile like this in a long time. I think you're having a good time with this.
This is very fun. This is very fun. I'm going to have to get out because I have an early day
Truth
tomorrow.
bombs now, buddy.
It was great to see you guys.
Well, thanks
And,
for joining us. So it was great to have you. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a quick little break, and then we'll do the after party.
15 minutes.
So I'm gonna put a little thank you screen. I'm gonna thank everybody for watching the YouTube and maybe possibly Rumble portion of our part 1, and we're gonna come back in a little bit with part 2, the after party, which is only available on Rumble, because I don't want the YouTube Gestapo to show up at my door. So thank you very much, and we will be back in a minute.
And here's a teaser for the Rumble. I am about to burn down that thought process about the trucker shortage. I am going to fry it.
All right. Yes, when we come back after our break, we will talk about the Great Honkining.